outside the box, if you will. I mean, go there, go off campus. Let's think this through. And sure enough, that's where the Mustang was born. When it finally hit, it took the country by storm.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. You know, this is the Motor City, and this is the show where we put cars into the context of your everyday life. We love to celebrate the great heritage of the automobile here in the Grosse Pointes, but we will make no apologies for our decidedly Detroit perspective. Today, we got a really good show for you. If you happen to miss the great auto show that we have right here in Grosse Pointe on the shores of Lake St. Clair, this is the place where you've got to visit for the next half hour. You're going to be able to visit the Eyes on Design show right here on Cars in Context today, and with us to do that is a longtime buddy introducing a new guest host today. It's my friend and longtime automotive journalist, Dan Brochstein. Dan.
Thanks for having me here, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out. I know you're going to like this because you too had visited Eyes on Design, and I know your family was involved with it as well.
Yep.
So we're going to be able to walk people through this really kind of cool concourse right here on Lake St. Clair. It's kind of really cool. And it's at the Edsel Eleanor Ford House, which has automotive tradition
historical
as well.
value, yeah.
But before we do that, Dan, we have to find out what's happening
In the news.
in the news. Yes, we do. I'll take this first one. It says here that, you know, I don't know about you guys, but consumers still don't trust their dealer. And they just did a study. You know, I've been lucky. I've had a dealership, been with for many, many years. I like the guys and I trust them. And not all of you, though, have that experience, because a lot of us report that the car buying experience is kind of traumatic.
Yes.
People just don't like buying a car. I love
Very
buying
stressful.
cars. I wish I could buy more cars. So if you'd like, everybody send me $1. And if everybody sent me $1, you know, I could buy maybe a Power Wheels. Yeah, something like that. No, anyway, there's a new study out by TrueCar, and that shows that there's a severe lack of trust between consumers and their dealers. A report found that car buyers would be willing to pay more for a car if there was more transparency in the whole car buying process. So you knew exactly what the dealer was getting that car for, how much he's making, you'd feel better about it because somehow in their heads they're feeling that they get to take it. Now this is the interesting part. Most people believe that dealers, you ready for this, Dan? They believe dealers make 20% from an average sale, 20% profit margin. And in reality, the number is really more like around 4% is the national average. So even though in your head you think the dealer's making 20%, he's only making 4% profit. And the survey actually said that consumers, they said when they asked him, what do you think would be a fair profit? They said, oh, I don't know, around 12%. So it's like 4 times more than they actually make. So that's a bizarre, but that shows when you find a dealer that you trust and you like, that's why it's a lifelong friendship. That's why you buy your cars.
Absolutely.
Why don't you take a headline for us, Dan?
Well, you know, this is an interesting one to read, because a company that you would not consider to be a green company, a company that wouldn't be considered to be innovators, Harley-Davidson unveiling their first electric bike. Electric.
So that blappity noise that goes by and your windows rattle, they're going to try to make an electric bike.
Yes.
Isn't that an oxymoron, Dan?
One would think it would be.
A Harley electric?
But no, they're following Yamaha, who a couple years ago made some electric motorcycles, and they're slated to come on sale in 2016.
Okay, well.
But the Harley-Davidson bike is called the Project Livewire. It is styled like a naked sport bike, a cruiser.
Yeah.
It's really contemporary. But they're going to shop the idea around. It's not out yet as a concept. It's on a road tour right now. It's going to go to the 30 major dealers in the U.S.
So Harley dealers will get it?
Harley dealers are going to get it.
So the guys with the jackets and the long hair, they're going to drive them?
They won't show up. No, I think they will. The interesting thing here, this marks another significant step for Harley, because this year they introduced the 500cc and 700cc street models.
I can't believe
The reason they did this, and who would ever think a Harley would be under 1,200 cc's, they want more younger buyers to consider Harley.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. Well, for you Harley guys that have always wanted an electric bike, hey, the times they are changing.
Yes, they are.
All right, I've got one. I got some good news. You know, if you've been watching the show for a while, and if you haven't, why haven't you? I mean,
the point.
you really got to be watching the show because this is where you're really going to get the good stuff. But if you've been watching us before, we've always talked about how China is becoming a major player in the automotive world and how trade imbalances are killing us. And one of our top shows had been, you know, why fair trade isn't fair. It's not fair. Well, guess what, folks? The World Trade Organization just recently ruled against, not us, but China.
Yep.
Can you believe it?
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, apparently they had, you know, I don't know if you guys remember, but China had put an import tariff, an additional tariff on U.S. built vehicles of 21.5% of their value. They added it on top of the ridiculous tariffs that they already had. And then they said, why did they do that? We said, well, you know what? You, Mr. Federal United States government, had bailed out the automakers, so that's a subsidy. So now we're going to charge a tariff because you're subsidizing the auto industry. But there's one problem with that. They didn't subsidize everybody. So if you build cars in the United States like Volkswagen, Nissan, Ford, you still got the tariff put against you. And the World Trade Organization said that violates international trade policy, so you have to roll it back or be fined. Or so I'm thinking, I don't remember, folks, when we've had ITO trade policy go our favor, but thank God somebody's paying attention.
Did.
Yeah. Now, do you have another one?
I do. Let's talk police cars for a moment.
Not behind me, I hope.
Nope, not behind you.
Thank God, those
Not
lights
behind you.
behind me. What am I doing now?
Well, it's interesting. Crown Victoria is not being built anymore.
Back when Dan was at Auto Week with me, Dan would go to the Michigan State Police, was it at MIS?
Yep.
The testing sessions, and you would check out all the police cars.
Yep.
And the Crown Vic, you know, as old as that car was, the cops liked them.
They did. You can't beat a big rear-wheel drive car with a trunk.
Yeah.
So the car's gone now. What do you think of all the cars on the road? What do you think the police are buying in the most quantities?
I would say with the Crown Vic gone, they're probably buying the Hemi Charger.
Hemi Chargers.
Yep, all over the place.
Not in this case.
Really?
Since Ford introduced the Interceptor, which is based on the Explorer, many police departments saw it as a potential for a canine vehicle or crime scene unit. They didn't think patrol right away.
Okay.
But the officers are raving about them.
Really?
You've got more room than you ever want for equipment. You've got leg room, you've got headroom, and you've got a comfortable vehicle to spend 10 or 12 hours in.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay, and you know, if it had the EcoBoost, I guess you could get decent mileage too.
Absolutely.
I find that surprising. I do see them here in Grosse Pointe, and the folks, if you've been seeing them, you're probably speeding. No, but they're so they're still selling. I mean, they're not selling well though, are they?
They are selling well. Ford sold over 14,000 of them, an increase of 140% compared to the last year.
An increase?
Yep.
See, I would think they would go down.
Nope. They've gone up.
Well, thank God for movies. You still see plenty of Crown Vics in the movies.
Yes, you do, and the cabbies will be glad to get theirs. Because all the Crown Vics on the road now are legacy vehicles.
Sure.
When they hit their $60,000-$65,000 service mark, then they're retired.
You guys get them at auction, all you kids, you murder them out, you paint them flat black, you keep the spotlights on, and you just scare everybody on I-94 with them. You know, like,
They're actually pretty cool.
Oh no, it's an old cop car. Yeah, I hate those guys. All right, I got one. Listen, folks, when you buy a new car, and I hope you're buying new cars now because this is the time to buy them, the economy's coming back. When you buy a new car, what's the number one thing people say they love about buying a new car? It's the new car smell. I love that new car smell. See, my car smells like French fries. Yeah, I don't know.
I've got the Tim Hortons air freshener.
Oh, did you?
hanging
Yeah,
on
okay. No, but the new car smell is why people love to get that new car smell. But guess what? The new car smell could be bad for you. Can you believe this? I'm not making this up. Apparently, that new car smell that we think is really cool actually comes from three things. It comes by plastics, foams, and adhesives that are used mostly in the interior, and they, after they're sitting for a while, they give off a smell, and that's these gases, and that's what you smell. Did you know that the government has an emission standard for the inside of the car?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the gases that are inside. So the new car smell, there's a standard. You can't smell too good, apparently.
Right.
Yeah. So what the one of the companies, Dow Automotive, what they've done is come up with a new technology. It's called SpecFlex Active. It's a new polyurethane foam which you can use in the seats, and it really helps the companies make these tighter emission standards and the requirements, meet the requirements. But my question is, but don't take that away from us. I mean, because don't you go to when you go to the car wash and they say, would you like pine air freshener, cherry, or the new car smell? I can't stand the pine. I get the new. So hopefully, thank you, Dow Automotive, for for fixing an emissions problem inside my car, but I still love the new car smell. I can't help it.
I think it comes back to when we were young, when our parents would bring home the new car,
Yeah.
and you got to see it for the first time. What's the first thing you got when you sat in it? That smell.
Yeah.
So when you smell it now, I mean, I'm sure it trips something in your memory. It's nostalgic.
Yeah, then if you've been buying used cars for too long and all you could smell was stale Newport lights, it's time to buy a new car.
unfortunate.
It really is. Well, listen, we have an absolutely new segment, and I don't know if Dan, I've been watching this. I know Dan Brochstein was the guy that got Cars in Context onto the YouTube channel. If it weren't for Dan, you wouldn't be able to see Cars in Context TV on YouTube. So Dan, we thank you for that. And this new segment we added is called Car Trivia Time. Now, Car Trivia Time is where we give out a little piece of automotive history, kind of test the audience, and we'll see how much automotive knowledge they have in their heads. So today we got a tough question for you. Here is today's car trivia question. What is the only car, and this is in all of automotive history, to ever appear simultaneously on the covers of two major magazines, Time and Newsweek? There was only one car in history that showed up on the cover at the same week on Time and Newsweek magazine. So as you start putting your thinking caps on, we're going to reveal the answer to this trivia question. And then we'll put Dan into the driver's seat. We'll talk about the Eyes on Design show here in Grosse Pointe Shores right after this message. Hi, and welcome back to Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. Today we're talking with a longtime friend of mine from my old Auto Week days and freelance automotive journalist, Dan Brochstein.
How are you?
Dan, thanks for joining us
Thanks,
today.
I'm enjoying
This is
it.
going to be a lot of fun. I appreciate you come talking about Eyes on Design, a great show we have out
Oh,
here in
yeah.
Grosse Pointe. But before we do that, Dan, we have to give to you the answer to our trivia question, which we just laid on you a couple minutes ago. I hope you've been thinking. I know a lot of you have been cheating on Cars in Context, so you're Googling before you come back after the break. Don't do that to yourself. Make your brain work. Here was the question we gave you. What is the only car to ever appear simultaneously on the covers of Time and Newsweek magazine? Drum roll. Ready to give me the answer?
Yes.
The answer is it was the Ford Mustang. It appeared on Time and Newsweek the week that the car was launched. Mr. Lee Iacocca, who's still around out there in California, who really was the president of Ford division and got this car built, had this car appear at the same time at two magazines. During that week, the dealers were swamped. Mustang, as you know, sold like crazy in 1964. In the first 18 months, they sold over 1 million Mustangs. Lee was a master of marketing.
Very
What a
much
great,
so.
and oh, by the way, another piece of trivia. He had, the night before the car went on sale, he had commercials appear on all three networks at the same time. Back then, folks, there were only three networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. He had the same commercial appear at the same time. So if you were watching television, you couldn't have missed it. But that was in the good old days.
Smart marketing.
We only had 3 channels.
That's true.
How can anybody have 3 channels? I mean, that's ridiculous. But anyway, so now let's put Dan Brochstein in the driver's seat. We're going to talk today about the Eyes on Design Concours de Elegance that we have every year here in Grosse Pointe Shores at the Edsel and Eleanor Ford House. We just came back from visiting the show. I was lucky enough to have my car as an invitation-only car appear this year. We walked the grounds all day. We spent a day on the shores of Lake St. Clair at the Edsel and Eleanor Ford House and saw the show. And we wanted to bring you a full report. So we brought our camera, took some pictures, and with Dan's experience and mine doing the show, I think we can kind of give you a feel of what you might get if you rolled out Lakeshore, parked your car, and walked across the street. So Dan, let's talk about, first of all, what this is all about. This is actually a charity.
Yes.
And the whole thing is to support the Detroit Institute of Ophthalmology. So the Eyes on Design. Of course, a lot of the great designers lived here in Grosse Pointe for so many, many years.
Absolutely.
The Dodges and the Fords and the Chryslers, they all lived down here. So we're kind of celebrating the art if you will, of designing
the
cars.
design and styling.
So the executives all play a role here, but for us, for the casual observer, you come to a concours, a show like this, to see a collection.
Right.
You want to see different stuff, and I think, Dan, that this has it. I mean, at the Ford House, it's a great place. First of all, if you haven't toured it,
Yeah, it's a great venue. It's historical,
Yep.
historical significance, and
the
it's
property.
just a great place to see a show.
Yeah, the property lends itself.
Yes, very much so.
A nice big rolling flat lawn, and it's a gorgeous backdrop out of Lake St. Clair.
Yeah.
So when you went, and I think you went last year.
I went last year.
And was your dad's car involved with that last year, or did you guys just go to cover it, or how did you do that?
I went to cover it
was
last
a
year.
freelance
The year
tour.
before, we had a vehicle in it, but I covered it last year, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, I got to tell you this, Dan. We're going to walk people through some of the pictures that I took today, and Jen Slott took some of these photos for me as well. My impression was, first of all, there's an air about going to the Edsel Eleanor Ford mansion. There's
Yes, there is.
just an air about being on the grounds. So when you come through the gates, you get your car registered, you roll to the field. You can see immediately when you look over the field, this isn't your typical car show at the Home Depot parking lot.
That's true.
I mean, you look over, this show has it all from the brass era cars, and as you see, right through some of the 50s. Now you see here, Dan, one of my favorites. Who doesn't like a Buick Roadmaster? Especially a convertible. I mean, there are several Buicks. One of the themes this year were the cars from Flint. And of course, Buick, the Buick boys were big up there. So there are plenty of really cool old Buicks like this. One of my favorites here was a 1957 Mercury. Yeah, now I tried to describe that color, Dan. Don't say pink.
No,
It's not salmon.
he got me. That was what
Okay, I don't know, but that is an actual factory color white over this. It's not chartreuse. Very unique factory color. Do you know the upholstery matched the inside of that car? But 57, when you talk about the era of design, it was all about design in 57. Those cars were pretty cool. Of course, another theme this year was 50 years of the Ford Mustang. Even though the Mustang is technically 1965 and 50 years would be 2015, the car came out in 64. Now there's a picture of my car. If you look real close to this picture, there's a person in my car. That is Jenny Clor catching a snooze in my T-roof 1977 Cobra 2. She said, I want to get some sun, and because we were parked under the trees there, she wanted to get a little sun. Like, she doesn't have enough sun. She likes to get a little color. But they also had a very interesting Mustang. This particular car was borrowed from the Detroit Historical Museum.
That's right, I've seen it, yes.
Yeah, this car was the Mustang II concept vehicle. This vehicle came out in 1963. This was the teaser that Ford Motor Company put on the auto show circuit to try to warn people, tease them that the real production Mustang is coming. This car is so desired to be seen by Mustang collectors that you got to put in for it years in advance. It's rarely rolled out of the museum, but this time was under a tent there. And of course, the big star of the show was this car. 50 years later, we came out with this. It's a 2015 Mustang. No, you cannot own one of these yet. They will go into production later this summer at Flat Rock. This was a prototype vehicle that Ford rolled out to the show, Dan. And this is a 2015 50th anniversary. Just Dan, you probably recognize what this thing is.
Ford GT?
Yeah, these GT40s. I don't care, whether you like the original ones from the 60s, like this car as a race car, or if you like the newer models that came out in 04 and 05. It took 100 years for Ford to make a car this cool. That car will never not be cool.
No, that's true.
I mean, when you look at it, that with the flat black paint, and the race cars they're just wonderful to look at, and also I understand just wonderful when they roll by. It makes the hairs on your arm stand up.
The sound is
They're
amazing.
great stuff. Yeah. Now, another theme at this year's show. There's several things. The great thing about Eyes on Design is each year there's several themes going on. One was to celebrate motorcycles, and it wasn't Harley. It was the Indian motorcycle brand. And so if you'll see, like you can see in the background, lots of Indian cycles. This one kind of intrigued me because it was like a military bike. And somebody found it, restored it back. You can see there's a saddle for the gun,
rifle holder,
rifle in the front, saddlebags. So they actually sold a lot of motorcycles during the war years, which I wasn't aware of. The motorcycles actually served the GIs well because it got over terrain that you really couldn't get in a vehicle, even though we had Jeeps. But the Indian brand was really big. Speaking of Jenny, my wife, she snuck around to see another theme for this year's show. They had a lot of these Hollywood cars. This car, Dan, would you call this a Hollywood car?
Oh, I would.
What would
I would.
the Monkees? If you guys know who the Monkees were, then okay, you're a '60s person. This is the Monkey Mobile. It was built off of some kind of Pontiac, as I recall. Was it a Le Mans?
It was a Le Mans, and it was styled by George Barris.
Okay, so George is a famous, and if you watched, I think you can watch him on television now. That vehicle that you're seeing here was in the very beginning, the intro, when they sang, "Hey, we're the Monkees," that thing. Yeah. I'm not going to sing, folks. I charge extra for singing. But when they play that theme, look for this vehicle, and you'll see all 4 of the Monkees hanging. Of course, you can't see all 4 of them now because we just lost Davy Jones.
That's
He
right.
passed away. But not to think that every car in the show was brand new and shiny. This cool old truck.
That's really cool.
Now, what do you think? I mean, does this belong in a concourse?
No,
Really?
really. I think it would be at home in any cruise night, any parking lot gathering,
It was.
and I think it's cool for those reasons.
Okay, this was kind of like the street theme. You know, it's more of a rat rod.
Right.
But I looked at it. I thought I was taking. He had a Detroit News wagon in the back and some Detroit memorabilia in there. Really
There are a lot of restorers, when they find cars like that, they'll just paint over the patina with a clear coat,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's all the charm.
They love that. Now, here's the coolest thing. What you get if you are an invitation-only car at the Eyes on Design show is there's a license plate you'll see in front of this old Packard. Each car will have this commemorative plate, and it has your name, your car on there. It's a really high-quality stainless steel plate. And at the end of the show, when they go to leave, you get to take this plate off and you get to keep it. So you can guess where the plate is that I got for being in the show. I took that off the stand, and it is now in my man cave in my home office at home. One of the coolest car shows, and not only that, folks, there is a really cool poster that they make each year. You can buy the posters to help the Detroit Institute of Ophthalmology. It's really cool. Dan, I have to admit, not too many times do we get a chance to go to a concourse, but here in Grosse Pointe, it's probably one of the best shows you can hit.
I think it is. I mean, if you've never been to a concours, it's so much different from your corner auto shows.
Yeah.
And it's really an experience everyone should take in.
But that's not all, folks. Now, if you thought, well, that was a really great show, and I've seen everything, you'd be wrong. Because we have a new segment, Dan, I brought out. It's called Pick of the Week. And the Pick of the Week is we just find a cool photo, or you send one in on the web that you said, this is really a cool photo. Can you talk about it? So today, the Pick of the Week is, you ready for this?
Yeah.
It's a photo of the 1955 Lincoln Futura. Now, folks, look at this really close. And Dan, I know you know what happened to this car.
That became the Batmobile.
Right. That was a show car in 1955 that Ford sold for $1, and George Barris, that customizer who did the Monkey Mobile, bought the car and turned this car into the Batmobile. Look at it closely. Doesn't it kind of, So you can see the Batmobile really wasn't completely done by Barris. It was
Right.
the designers at Ford did. Really cool Pick of the Week. Thanks so much for you guys sending that in. Also, but there's a better segment. This segment's been around forever. It's called Pride in My Ride. Now, Dan, I know that you've had a lot of rides over the years.
Yes.
And you're going to break new ground today on Pride in My Ride, because Pride in My Ride today is owned by you.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this ride.
This is my 2004 Harley-Davidson V-Rod. I picked it up about 3 months ago, and it's my first foray into riding Harleys. Neat trivia point about this bike is that it's the only Harley-Davidson now that is liquid-cooled.
What?
It's liquid-cooled, and the engine was helped to be designed and developed by Porsche.
Really?
Yes.
I had no idea.
And for that reason, a lot of the Harley purists tend to shun it.
Oh, man.
So there are nice little niche clubs that start, and people that are like-minded to this bike can get together and meet. But I've had it, and I just love it.
So tell us the truth. Do you actually get on this with a black jacket and like?
I have a black jacket.
Okay. Do you wear a helmet?
Yes.
Oh, so well, thank you for doing that, because we don't need to find your noggin.
Well, 12 years as a paramedic taught me a lot.
Oh, there you go.
The importance of the helmet.
But driving now, we have never done Pride My Ride on a motorcycle, but you're a car guy.
I am.
What's the connection there for you? It's just the speed, the freedom of driving that thing. What makes it
The
happen?
visceral experience, the sound of the engine right beneath your ear, the wind, everything is completely different. But the commonality is it's just it's an adrenaline rush.
Well, thanks for showing that, folks. That proves if you have pride in your ride, even if it's a motorcycle, I will take it. Send it to me, Clor at carsincontext.com, and we'll put it on the air. Of course, you have to tell us a little reason why you have pride in your ride. And I clearly, I understand, even though it's cars in context, I understand the whole thing about bikes. But you know, there's even more to the show than that.
There is.
Yeah, this is the time of the show where we have viewer mail. We ask Lauren Parrott of WMTV. Lauren, I know you've been fumbling through that mailbag. There's got to be some mail for us.
There is mail.
Oh, thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Oh,
so
we
much.
have mail.
You're welcome. It
and-
took me forever.
Well, thank God she found some. Lauren brings out some mail, and hopefully, Dan, you can answer some of these questions. Thanks for sending it again. Dan, why don't you take that first viewer mail from us?
Now, this one comes from Roger S. of Grosse Pointe Woods.
Okay.
He watches Cars in Context on Comcast channel 915.
Ooh, Roger, that means you're watching us in HD. So the only worthwhile
My
thing.
hair
to-
look okay?
It was Lauren that they were.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
it wasn't
gotcha.
us. Go ahead. What's your question?
Well, he saw the results of a new Gallup poll that said most Americans consider television their main source of news.
Oh, okay.
55% of adults who responded said they turn on the television to get their news, while only 21% said they use the internet.
Really?
Yeah. And it was just a mere 5% that says they get the news from newspapers, which
Newspaper.
kind of was expected. But
Yeah. So,
I was surprised at the number being 21%.
yeah, I mean, so
That's low.
everybody is definitely getting their news from the television. So,
News stations.
so Roger, do you think then? You're obviously watching television, right? He's watching television.
Yeah, we're right here.
So I think that it's probably true as for adults. I don't think it's true for younger people. Why Cars in Context is on WMTV? I hope you're watching on television, but we also do put it on the web. Thanks to Dan, we put it on Cars in Context TV on YouTube, so that you can do both. I mean, I like to watch it live and to see it in the evening, and after work. We're on at 7 and 9 in
Okay.
prime time, but yeah, I think as the adults get older, they'll use more of the web.
I
think
agree.
they'll- All right, I've got one. It says, this one comes to us from Matt B., and Matt lives in St. Clair Shores, and he's watching us on AT&T Uverse, which is Channel 99.
That's what I
And here's a question, Dear John. Hey, I love your show. Hey, I love it too, Matt. Thank you. I heard that VW is thinking of selling a new pickup truck in the United States. Yeah, it's a truck they sell in other global markets. It's called the Amarok. Is it expected to come here? Do you think they will do it and sell a VW truck here? Matt, there's a picture of the truck. That's the Amarok. VW executives that we've talked to say, you know what? It's kind of small. I don't think they could put it out there and really cover the market the way they need to, because, Dan, it's all about F-150 and
Yeah,
Silverado.
and Ram.
So they don't think that this little VW Amarok can really tackle the market for us. But I would say, don't count them out. There are a lot of people. Nissan wants to come back with another truck. I heard they're doing a new Frontier pretty soon.
Yep.
Everybody wants to play in the truck market. Everybody wants a piece of Detroit's action.
I think what will happen is, GM is getting back in with their smaller pickups,
Yep.
which are not really that small, but I think they're going to fire the first shot, and everyone else is going to be sort of waiting to see what happens.
We had that show, Whatever Happened to Small Pickups. Another reason why you go back on YouTube, and for YouTube and for Cars in Context TV, we have to thank you, Dan. We're out of time.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming by.
Had a
We
good time.
appreciate it. We love to read your stuff, and stay out there and keep bringing the freelance stories in. Come
Absolutely.
on back to Cars in Context.
I'd love
and
to.
do a couple more. And folks, we want you to come back to Cars in Context too. Remember that knowledge is power. I've been your host, John Clor, and thanks for watching.